Welcome to the Time for a Reset podcast. I'm Arthur Nasser and I'll be hosting the new segment, Inside Marketing Transformation. In this podcast, we'll have insightful conversations with marketers who are managing and leading change in their organizations.
So we'll just start with just kind of setting the scene a little bit, introduce Tribe Payments, introduce what you do there. Maybe even a little bit about yourself. It'd be great to hear, your background, how you got to where you are. And then we can go into some of these more sort of specific, marketing questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll hand over to you to give us a bit of an intro.
Okay. Helen Owen, I'm VP of Marketing at Tribe Payments. We're a Fintech company. We provide payments processing and technology to banks, fintechs and acquirers. So we're very much behind the scenes. We're a technology enabler, a reasonably young company. We've been around for about 3 years. So we're going into that kind of from the startup to the scale up size, which is a really interesting time to be a marketer in this type of business. And we're exclusively B2B. My background is exclusively B2B. I don't want to confess how many years I've been doing B2B marketing, but I've spent the last 15 years of those of my career in the payments and fintech space. Prior to Tribe, I was an independent marketing consultant for 9 years. So I worked with quite a variety of different companies through that. So I had a quite an adventure, I would say, doing that. Really interesting to work with companies from sort of one person businesses, micro businesses, right up to kind of global corporations with 30,000 kind of employees. So it's quite a ride in terms of learning journey and variety of work during that time, which has been really interesting, and I've been very fortunate to have.
Yeah, I was going to say that sort of breadth of experience is invaluable, isn't it? You've probably seen near enough every marketing challenge that exists from, as you say, from the very, very small to the very, very large.
Well, I would say yes, but I'm still finding I'm doing new things every day, which I love. And I think that's one of the beauties of working in marketing is, you do get to learn and experiment and tackle new challenges all the time. So, I learned a huge amount in that space of time, but learning doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And in particular, in our industry that is in constant flux, constant change. And I've often said this, but change is the only sort of constant now, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's also true of the fintech industry. Having been in it for 15 years, it wasn't even called fintech when I joined the industry. So that wasn't even a thing. And it was pretty boring. And now it's huge, it's broad, there's so many different niches and pockets, and there's new ones coming up all the time. So that combination of an evolving industry and an evolving profession makes for an interesting life.
For sure. What sort of customers does Tribe Payments have? Who do they aim at? Do they aim at sort of the big banks, or is it small businesses? Who are your typical customers?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've got quite a lot of variety, and that variety is building. But we have some niches, I suppose. So we have younger fintechs who are kind of just starting out on their journey. They're bringing a new proposition to market, and they can be in lots of different pockets. But generally speaking, there's some kind of payments capability that they need. They don't want to produce it in-house. There's a lot of complexity to a lot of things that they need to consider. So they might be, generally they fall under the EMI category, which is European Money Institute, an e-money institute, and they're generally in Europe. Some are payment institutions, so they're not fully fledged banks for the most part, although we do have some banks as customers now. And then we have acquirers, and for those outside this industry, that basically means the type of licensed businesses who support retailers, merchants. So to accept payments as a merchant, you need to have an acquirer. They're the ones who provide your merchant account, the ability to move those payments around and move the data and transactions between the right parties. So we provide the technology and processing power for those type of businesses.
So you've probably got a number of different personas that you target, and you've got which adds just further complexity and means you've got different different roles and different tasks.
Absolutely. So we're just going through the process now of kind of refining value propositions and looking at buyer personas and how our proposition translates into different segments, different buying drivers for those groups. And for instance, we've just started to more actively market ourselves to cryptocurrency exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really fortunate that we have eToro, for instance, as a client, and we're finding a strength there. So we're almost letting the market demand come to us, and then adapting to that with our marketing in terms of refining what the proposition is, and then taking that back to the market, which is an interesting way to work.
It is, but maybe it's the right way to work so that your customers find you.
Well, I mean, if demand's coming to you, then
you're doing
and it's something
right.
and you can support it, and it's the right commercial model for you and everything, and it works for you as a business, then absolutely. Yeah.
So you've been in marketing for a while, you understand the landscape. B2B is, I think, a very, very interesting space and probably quite different on the day-to-day basis than B2C. In your world and from what you've seen coming up to this point, if you had to reset the one thing in B2B marketing, what would that be?
I love it when people ask me this because they don't always like the response I give. I would say it's around digital marketing. Now, before anyone starts getting a bit cross and antsy with me about this, I don't think we need to reset digital marketing, but I think we need to reset how we think about it, how we talk about it, how it's approached. If you ever take any time to look at job specifications or job adverts particularly for senior roles, it says, you must have a really strong background in digital marketing. But what you don't see is must have a really strong background in understanding your audience and translating your marketing into what benefits you deliver for that customer and finding out where they are and targeting, however you would say that in a condensed way. My belief is that I don't even like to call it digital marketing. Digital is just a subset of channels of tactical delivery. It makes more sense to me to talk about holistic marketing, integrated marketing. When you're talking about strategy, it's about, as you were saying, all these different personas, the different target markets and segments. Who are you trying to talk to? Who are you trying to engage? And where are they? And go from there, and what do they want to hear from you? What's going to make them buy from you? What are the benefits you can deliver to those groups? And then think about how you deliver that engagement. How do you tactically map that out? And digital channels will be a part of that mix. I don't believe in treating it separately. At a more junior level in your team, of course, you're working on a more tactical level. You will have specialisms within the team. Although I don't call him a digital marketer, he is my performance marketing manager. But then we have a content marketer, and he uses digital means and digital channels for delivering that content. But what we do is start with the premise and what we're looking to do in terms of sales objectives or communication objectives and go from there. So I would never write a digital marketing strategy. I would write a strategy, and I would then write a tactical delivery plan that includes all of our different channels and tools for engagement.
That's excellent. And what I really love about that is that off the bat, it deals with the whole silos issue, doesn't it? And they're so common, and they're so obstructive to marketing being done well at times. And they're actually, I think, potentially fairly obstructive for transformation and growth, because every silo sits by itself and doesn't really care what the other parts of the business are doing or what the other parts of marketing. As long as they're doing their bit, that's all what they're concerned with.
Yeah, 100%. It's actually something I saw a lot as a freelancer, because you get that kind of external view of how different people are working within teams. And so many times I saw, a social media executive who would be just kind of pushing out a whole bunch of stuff onto LinkedIn and Twitter and wherever else. And it wasn't always connected to what they were doing elsewhere. And we do supplement, we do, we push out content into social channels that is, I suppose, not part of broader campaigns. to make sure, we've got to keep the lights on and make sure that we're still talking to people and showing our presence. But it should never be entirely separate, because, as you say, that creates those silos, and then what you start getting is counterproductive processes and teams that don't talk to each other. And for me, we try, if we're doing a campaign, that campaign, we need to think about how it translates into everything. So I have everyone in my team working on a campaign, not just one or two people, but everybody, even if it's just a small thing. For the performance marketing manager, he'll be thinking about, how do we get this into the website, and how do we think about it for paid social or PPC? What SEO factors do we need to think about in here? How does that shape the content? And make sure they work with the content manager to develop that. And I just through trial and error, through experience, that for me has always worked.
And it's a great segue, because delivering value, I mean, it's a marketing function. Marketing delivers value. Perhaps not recognized enough at times, and maybe even in larger organizations they might lose sight of that, and it just becomes a cost center or an output, or again, just as a part of the business. It sits over there and it does something. We're not quite sure how much it adds value, we're not quite sure what it does. But what's your sort of view and belief around where marketing's headed? Is it becoming more or less important to business? Is it fundamental to business, perhaps now versus a few years ago?
It's a really good question, because so much has changed, just generally in the world, I suppose, in the last few years, and I don't think anyone would debate that. So I think what it means has happened. I mean, obviously my view is going to be it's more important than ever, right? I'm not going to pretend I'm not biased on that, though, but just looking at it hopefully a little bit more objectively, what I've seen happen over the last few years has been kind of almost like a stop-start in the recognition of importance of marketing. So pre-pandemic, I would say, there was some recognition of the importance of marketing, and then suddenly no one's allowed to go anywhere. The sales teams are not able to get out and network with people in person. There's no conferences and events going on. There's no hospitality and schmoozing and all those things that particularly sales teams would rely on. And so there's a lot of scrambling going on, and suddenly you think marketing can help. But it also meant for marketing, all marketing teams had to really adapt. Some companies were battening down the hatches and saying, we're not going to spend on marketing because margins are going to be squeezed, revenues at risk. So we mustn't spend. Others did the opposite, and there weren't many that were in the in-between space. It was kind of really interesting to see, and I was still a consultant at the time, so I saw companies doing both, some doing one and some doing the other. Really fascinating to watch on the outside. Now things are settling. I did initially see, suddenly the market's flooded with marketing jobs. Everybody's recruiting. The question that I still don't know the answer to is, was that because they were backfilling roles that potentially they would have recruited into during the pandemic but were holding off? Or did something happen during the pandemic that made businesses realise that marketing can deliver all this extra value that they didn't see before? And so now they're investing more. And of course, now what's happening is there's warning of global economic slowdown and, threats, especially in the tech areas where there's been lots of layoffs and high profile sort of devaluations, that kind of thing. So then there's a bit more of that caution happening again in terms of investing in marketing. And I've seen lots of colleagues in other companies saying budgets are being cut, we've got to withdraw from things. And it's just, it boggles the mind a little bit, because in my view, it's just my view, I would hope that I'd get some agreement from my peers, is that consistent investment in marketing is really, really important, and preferably growing investment in it, because that's how you build momentum. And you can't just switch off the lights in marketing and not see the effects of that, not just immediately, but 4, 6 months, a year down the line. You have to try and grow through things wherever you can. If it just means being smarter with your marketing, doing things differently, making sure you squeeze every drop out of your budget, then absolutely kind of should be doing that anyway. So it's really tough because I think it varies so much on an individual company basis as to how they perceive that value and how they react to external conditions.
Yeah, and I think every sector is going to have its own pains and its own kind of challenges, but definitely what I've heard from you is actually that there's potentially a clear link between growth and marketing, right? Companies want to grow. Marketing is a route to that growth. As long as you do it well, you can do marketing badly. You can waste money in marketing, but if you do it cleverly, if you ensure that your marketing is efficient, that you take all the steps necessarily to make it as efficient as possible, then it really can be a route to growth. What do you think causes marketing to not lead more at the board table? So if we say that marketing can be fairly important, very important, it can be a driver for growth. Where do you think instances of marketing not leading at the board table or not even being at the board table, where do you think those kind of businesses are going wrong, or where's the disconnect there?
Well, I think so. There's probably several answers to that. So sometimes it's about the stage of company. My title is VP. I don't sit on the board, so we don't have a C-suite representation in that very traditional sense, and we probably don't necessarily warrant that just now in our stage of growth. We don't even have a fully fledged C-suite in that sort of way, and I think that's quite typical of startups, although you do see obviously some exceptions to that where they build marketing at the board level right from the beginning. And I do think that with startups, that's very much down to the founder. It's very much down to what they need to achieve and how they're going about doing that. If a business is building that minimum value proposition first and doing some quiet testing or something, but they're not thinking about it yet from a marketing point of view, then they're probably going to be more product led than they are marketing led. And I think that's very much a cultural thing, maybe with some industry influences in there. When you look at more established companies, I think that's where it gets really interesting, because I have also seen a lot of reasonably well established businesses who don't have a CMO, for instance. And perhaps they have some other means like a CRO or some other means of representing marketing at the C-suite, but often it's not the case. Again, there's it's dependent on who else is on that board. What are they valuing? You'll always find a CFO. You will always find certain other positions because they see them as business critical.
Yeah.
Marketing is not always seen as business critical. Of course, you and I would say, that's rubbish. Of course it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's about really understanding what marketing can deliver and how. And some of that is down to the understanding or experience of the board. Some of it is how marketing is delivered within the organisation and how well, I don't know if you found this, but I've found as marketers, we're not always good at marketing ourselves, right? And doing that communication piece of, and it's not about shouting about what we do in a kind of loud way, but it's about demonstrating value, not sitting there and arguing and saying, but marketing can do this. Like, show them. If you can, show them results, show them. And it's not just about sales figures, because in a true sense of marketing, if you include comms within that, which I personally do, I think it should always be part and parcel of marketing. It's much more than that. It's about stakeholder relations. And I would even include employees within that. It's about company culture. And it should be a really integral part of any business that you're thinking about all these different facets and what marketing can help to deliver in terms of cohesion and buy into the company, both internally and externally. Especially if you think about, companies where you have a high volume of employees or maybe partners who are client facing or industry facing. You've got to engage them as much as you do your prospects, and those are some of the areas where marketing can really deliver. It's not all about lead generation. It's also about sales enablement through the funnel. It's also about stakeholder comms. It's, we really need to look at it more holistically. I bang the drum about this a lot and people probably get quite fed up with it, but I think it's important. And the more we do that, the more we can influence the board levels to recognize it and to start thinking about how important marketing is to their organization.
I think you've sort of mentioned a couple of things there that are actually really, really nice, and that's around some of the softer skills around marketing leadership is actually around navigating those boardroom conversations, around gently putting marketing onto the agenda without the, as you rightly say, without the sort of shouting about what we do, and maybe even without the sort of, we reached a CPM of XYZ, ordinarily not the right way to the boardroom. It's, as you say, more of a people skill. And this is what I'm finding, actually, the more people I'm speaking to, and obviously we know this, but it really comes to life how important people skills are within the marketing function. They're critical. And I think the closer you are to that sort of the top of that marketing function in an organization, whatever that top is, the more you have to be very people orientated, diplomatic.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you just use that term diplomatic, because I think that's actually like one of the most important things we can do as marketers, especially as marketing leaders. I think we need to be, wherever you sit in a marketing function, you need to be creative, you need to be a data scientist, you need to be a commercial analyst, but you also need to be advisor, diplomat, negotiator, empath. There's so many different skills, and of course not everybody's going to have all of those things, but as a function, as a team, you absolutely have to always find that balance between creativity and hitting your numbers. You need to make sure you're engaging people and understanding their issues, but not being their agony aunt. But that's the joy and the importance of the role. I think it's part of the reason why I love it.
I was going to say, this is probably why we never get bored in marketing.
Absolutely.
But you really have brought to life how marketing is pretty much infused into so many different parts of the organization. But it obviously, marketing is becoming more data and tech led. It's data and tech is such critical parts of marketing now. They always were, but at least tech is far more central to marketing now. Where many instances the sort of CTO and the CMO are probably sitting, there's a massive crossover on the Venn diagram now, more so than ever. But what does that do to the operating model around sort of marketing? So, what's your experience with the change in operating model?
Yeah, again, I think this point of balance is what comes in here. So we've been building the MarTech stack here, and so starting with some quite, I suppose, some reasonably basic tools to help us with automation, with understanding web analytics, all that side of things. So you've always got to have at least a minimum. And bearing in mind, I think that, as you scale as an organization, you really need to think how you're going to scale your marketing technology with that. But it's got to come back to the strategy. What are you trying to deliver? There is absolutely no point in going out and buying tech platforms that have all the bells and whistles if you're not going to use it, or if you haven't thought about what you're going to use it for and how much capability you need, not just right now, but in a year or 2 years. And that might change. But for me, the most important consideration that we've had as we build the technology stack to support this team. I mean, we're still a small team, but we're always trying to think just slightly ahead of where we are. And we're always thinking about having that, we call it like the central point of truth for marketing, in terms of visibility of performance and visibility of the funnel. Provided we've got that, we can manage anything else.
Yeah. And that's critical. It's absolutely critical to sort of operations.
We've really
to telling the stories, understanding,
massively. I mean, actually, we really didn't have very good visibility of what was happening in the funnel. System that we had was not working well for us, and so I spent a good few months last year trying to manually analyze the funnel so I could understand what was happening, and then how we needed to adjust what we were doing, A, in the technology to make sure that we had that visibility, and B, into the strategy and tactical delivery of the marketing function. We've righted ourselves now, and we have much, much better visibility. And what that's now giving us is the ability to build much more structure around the data, both at a performance level for kind of monitoring how we're doing as a function, but also at that prospect level, and also with our other stakeholders that we, from a database point of view, if you want to simplify it, and to try and build more data into that. So what we can start to enable is more buyer-driven, personalized experiences through the marketing, through various marketing sales stages. And that's something we're embarking on now, which is really exciting. It also enables us to be much more targeted, which is hugely important, particularly for us. We're in a crowded marketplace. We are targeting quite niche groups, really, of buyers. And so the more targeted we can be, the more effective we can be. And we're already starting to see some really strong results from just being more data driven.
That's really fascinating. And I think it sounds to me like the more trust you have in the data that you have, the stronger the narrative gets, the more you can work towards optimization, and probably the more confident you are in those boardroom conversations, in telling the story of what marketing is doing for the business. But it starts with trust in the data and trust in the output that we know what marketing is doing for us. It's not a guess.
No, you're absolutely right. And if we'd have had this conversation this time last year, a lot of what we were doing was guesswork. Now what we're doing is we absolutely understand what is happening. We're bringing in things. We're also now bringing in things like analysis, so gap analysis, competitor products, and having a look at all of those things, and win and loss analysis from the sales team, what things are coming in through sales conversations. And so working closely with other departments to kind of feed in both hard data and more anecdotal type data to help us build a much better picture. Because I think we have to remember that data isn't always about names and numbers. It's sometimes it is more anecdotal. And if you can capture that somehow and bring it all together, you'll have a much fuller picture of what you're dealing with and why things are working or not working.
And this very much sounds like a slightly further ahead part of your transformation journey. Obviously, it's never complete. You're gonna once you get to where you were planning to get to 2 years ago, there'll be other things that you're going to have to transform into.
New destination.
What exactly? The bus never. It's like the circle line. It's not like one of the normal lines. It just keeps going around in circles. In terms of your next steps, what do you perceive to be your biggest challenges around your next steps in that transformation?
That's a really good question. So I've got some good background in a number of other facets of marketing that I've not yet been able to introduce here, partly because we didn't have that data alignment. So account-based marketing, for instance, I'm a big fan of account-based marketing, but you cannot even entertain introducing it until you have some base level of data that you can work with and enough resources to pull it off properly. I'm getting towards having enough resources to do that. And then what we're doing really is trying to build now closer relationships between sales and marketing, which is, I very strongly believe in the importance of building those bridges and making sure that you're really two parts of the same team with sales and marketing, rather than the traditional fights that I think have always happened between old school sales and marketing is really counterproductive. And so that's a perennial challenge, I think, for a lot of marketers. So building a much stronger synergy between the two teams. And I think we're really making some good strides there. But it will continue to be, an ongoing work, I think. But really understanding what sales need to help further down the funnel, because what we've got now is we've got an awesome lead generation engine. And I'm just saying that because I've just been told my numbers for this month and I'm really, really happy. But what then we need to do is we've got a small and fairly fresh sales team. They're really, really good, really experienced, but they need support. They need collateral, they need demos, they need customer testimonials. There's a lot of things that they need to help push those over the line. We're looking at shortening the sales cycle, and that's just another area where I think marketing can really support sales and be a partner to them. So that's where I want to take it next. I kind of feel like we have to keep that momentum in the lead gen area. We've put a lot of effort in and we've got it in better shape. Equally the same on the data front, but now it's about supporting further down the funnel and into existing customers as well. So those are the things we need to do next. So that's where I'm taking it next. And then it's about, continuing to build brand, building networks and relationships across the industry. And then, we've got some interesting plans ahead with geographical expansion. So that will throw up its own challenges. Luckily, I've worked internationally, but going into markets where you've got to tackle languages and cultural nuances and all those things is always a fun thing to do.
You've got a busy couple of years, Helen. I've got two more questions for you. One is around this kind of, taking the marketing conversation up to the board level. What one thing can you do to try and help elevate marketing to the boardroom?
Well, actually, I think doing things like this helps, right? The more education generally you can do, the more encouragement of people to talk about all the different things that marketing can deliver. But I really do think that show and tell works best. I will be pushing for those opportunities to sit with the board. For instance, we've just done a really big campaign we've just launched last week. 9 or 10 different delivery channels we've used for that. We've baked in email automation, social, we've done primary research, baked in SEO, we've done media, paid media, but a whole variety of different things. And then when we start to see more results from that, that's when it gives me a really good, almost like a case study. And we're already starting to build that now to say, here's what we did, this is why we approached it this way, and here's what we've delivered as a result. And just that kind of really tangible example of all the different tools and tactics and things that we can bring to the table and how that delivers better results. That kind of show and tell is powerful. And equally, I'll continue to do that in lots of different ways, not just with lead gen campaigns, but with other things. We've just introduced analyst relations, and a member of our executive team is doing the briefings with analysts, and I've got a record of the share of voice increase that's created as a result of what was a very short program so far. In 4 months, we've had a 10% increase in share of voice. So, those type of things, it's actually given us some leads as well, which we didn't expect. It was a bit of a bonus. Those type of things where we can show the type of results that the board understands and appreciates, that will start to eke away at the credibility for marketing, and then start to allow us into more conversations, I think.
Amazing. So it's a twofold process of, one, speaking their language better, and two, getting them to understand our language better.
100%. It is really important to understand what's important to the board, and making sure that marketing is aligned to what their objectives are for the business.
Excellent. And then finally, just, if there's a piece of advice that you'd personally give to other marketers, it's an open question. What's the one thing that you'd say?
I would say there's no such thing as failure. Don't be afraid to fail. It can be stifling in creativity, but also in learning if you are afraid of doing something that might not work. I think if you put in enough groundwork, you understand what you need to achieve, and you've understood your market and the buying drivers and your personas and all those things. If you've got ideas then about how to deliver marketing, but you think it's a little bit risky, if you can afford to take that risk, you should do it. The only thing that makes you a failure is failing to learn from something that didn't work. So even if you do something and it doesn't produce the results that you wanted, there's always something to learn from that. And as long as you learn from it and you take that forward into whatever you do next, then it's still a win. And I think that's really important. I personally take an approach of around roughly about 50% tried and tested methods and about 50% experiment. And that's how we continue to keep it fresh, and we continue to improve performance that way.
Superb. So it's all about building a culture of test and learn, and failing is fine as long as you're getting data points and understanding where to go next and where not to go. A great note to end on. Helen, thank you very, very much for joining us today. It's been genuinely a pleasure speaking to you.
Likewise, I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Time for a Reset Inside Marketing Transformation. We have a great lineup of guests coming onto the show. If you're a new listener, subscribe and follow CVE on LinkedIn to make sure you don't miss an episode. I'll see you on the next one.